Hey, Stoney here with another game of Mechabellum. If you're wondering how to defend against an aggro fort plus sandworm, here's the game for you. Let's go. At the bottom here, I am playing as a quick supply specialist with Tarantula and Marksman, and my opponent Kimpack is playing as a Rhino specialist with balls and crawlers. Whenever you see a balls and crawlers, you can almost assume that it's going to be some sort of asymmetrical push. It's just a matter of guessing which side you want to be. I always pick the left-hand side because most people are right-handed and they like to go on the right-hand side. It's a little rough to start with the Tarantula as a defender because they don't have a lot of range, and even though they can tank a little bit of damage, they are not great into steel balls because when you're looking at Arclight, they can actually have more splash, better at chaff clear, and also cheaper. And they're just dying just as quickly as a Tarantula when you're running into steel balls. So this is a bit of a rough situation. So with round one, I was putting the units all the way to the left-hand side, and I had a very advanced group of fans. One way I've seen people play against ball crawler is just to have a Congo line of fans so that the balls will forever get stuck on shooting at this pack of fans. And from time to time, you can either get more splash on the tarantulas, or you can just put on a sentry missile. Since everything, as you just saw, everything was going to this little box here. So that's making your 50 supply sentry missile always hitting about 200 to 300 supply worth of units, with a very good value. Round one, when pretty much as you expected, the steel ball crawler, they were just a little too strong for my tarantulas. It's just not great in a defensive position. Whenever I play spiders, I love to have them on the line because they are actually an excellent aggro unit. But in defense, I feel like they're just a little lacking because of the... Round two, we got a unit drop. Sledgehammer was my top choice. Sledgehammer is deceivingly powerful when used as a chaff into steel balls. When you put them into a vertical formation like this, all 8 of these steel balls will shoot individual tanks, so they will continue to charge up, kill it, charge up, kill it, and it will take a tremendous amount of time. The first tech I took on the Tarantula was high explosive ammo. It's a very cheap tech. It only costs 150 supplies, and it allows me to essentially double my effectiveness at chaff clear. Now, the steel balls remain a problem, but I hope my level 2 sledges in this vertical configuration should be able to help a little bit more. Added a missile on the far right, and also I was anticipating some sort of flanking maneuver from my opponent, so I added an extra set of crawlers all the way at the bottom right, bottom left. So let's see how this does. For my opponent, he took the level 2 Mustangs. Ball stang is a legitimate meta. So the way it works is the steel ball provides the tanking as well as single unit damage, and the Mustangs pretty much clears up all the small units in front of the steel ball. So since they are moving at the same speed, it is a very potent combination into an aggressive play. So here you see the power of these sledgehammers, right? They're just kind of lining up with all the steel balls to shoot and charge up. And also you're seeing the power of high explosive ammo. Yes, you're taking a hit on your overall damage output. However, with the splash, I become so much better at chaff clear, and sometimes when you're shooting, let's say, a single steel ball, that splash does carry over into an adjacent steel ball, thus killing the pack slightly faster if you're in the right position. This is another reason why I like to have sort of a Congo line of chaff here instead of just having horizontal chaff, because it forces the steel balls to clump, allowing my Tarantula to do a little bit more damage. Reinforcement. My opponent took the item on the Mustang. It's a great item on the Mustang. For me, I took oil. Actually, no, that was smoke from the item, and then I bought oil from my pack. Whenever you have smoke into an aggro position, do consider getting oil as well. Oil is universally great against aggro, especially against steel balls, because they really need that range to get to your units. Combine that with the smoke here on the line, which is really indefensible. Like, you cannot put a shield. You can maybe cover like a little bit of the smoke oil, but it's not going to cover the whole path. So what it means is when you use both the items together, yes, it's quite expensive. However, both of these items last 2 rounds, and that just means in these 2 rounds, that aggro push is going to be severely weakened, as you can see here. None of the steel balls are actually shooting right now. I mean, they're just getting into range, and it's just so painful as an aggro player. My defensive missile is doing what it's supposed to do. Yes, it's 50 supplies and it hurts, but in times like these, when you need that missile to protect you from getting an early tower, I think it's well worth the price. Round 4, we're looking at reinforcement again. I'm thinking some of these unit production cards could be really good if I am going with the giant spec. However, absorption module could be good. Again, I have to be in a giant spec. So none of this is particularly useful at this moment because I am quick supply spec, and right now there's really no need for me to go giant just yet. Scorpion would be an excellent defense into steel balls. A couple of scorpions combined with high explosive tarantula can absolutely wreck this particular push here. Now, when you're defending into aggro, a lot of times we like to concentrate our fire onto one side. But that sometimes is a mistake, because a smart opponent will realize where the defense is going to be strong and they will actually hit you on the other side. So I wanted to add another pack of fans here so my tarantula can do what it's supposed to do. For my opponent, there's going to be a level 2 rhino with the absorption module and also a boat. This is a very potent push because none of my units here will actually have the damage output to deal with these two. However, he doesn't have chaff clear, nor does he have whirlwind on this rhino, which means he's going to get stuck on these 2 packs of fangs. Unfortunately, one of my fan is moving slightly off its position. Ooh, great missile here, slowing down this rhino, but I don't think I'll be able to get this rhino before it gets onto my units. And once it gets onto my units, the absorption modules start to work, and that's when things get really dead. All right, another missile is going down, almost getting the unit, and now we're just going to have to watch him slowly heal all the way back. And now my smoke is working against me with the oil. It's causing me delays, so I'm getting my opponent's tower. I do get it in time, but my chaff clear is just too far out. I'm not able to clear these crawlers. And if I can't clear these crawlers, I can't get to the rhino. And if I can't get to rhino, it's going to come in and wreck every single unit on my team. So not great, but now that I know what my opponent wants to do, now I have an opportunity to defend. This was a very costly push. I mean, it worked, but it could have worked so much better. Right now, these are the only units that's left on the board for my opponent. Ideally, when you're pushing into a tower, you want to time it so that by the time you get tower, most of the rest of your army should still be intact and doing damage. All right, reinforcement cards once again. Underground threat is just a little too good to ignore. I also wanted to take Wasp Swarm because for my opponent, there's really not a lot of defense against air. But I end up taking Underground because one thing you can do with Underground is to take Replicate on that same turn, and you're going to have a grand old time just replicating crawlers in the back line. My opponent was thinking about the same thing. He was protecting himself from my Replicate cheekiness. But what he didn't know is that I also took double tower upgrade. So when you're going up against crawler, mirror, any sort of tower upgrade is going to give your crawler a slight advantage. And if you have replicate, it's just going to compound that advantage. So I have no problem winning the fight at the back right here. The cheeky missile went down because this is where all the steel balls are going to converge. And more steel balls on the far right in preparation for that rhino, which absolutely wrecked me last game. I also added snipers. One more sniper here for the boat. My opponent smartly moved the boat away, now knowing there's not going to be any chaff there and not enough firepower. So might as well save the boat and live for fight another day. Alright, looking at the strong side here, these units are still doing a bang-on job of holding on the line here. The Tarantula, which is on now level 3, can actually dispatch level 2 balls fairly easily. The snipers themselves are actually doing work as well. Level 2 crawlers are replicating in the back here. Now, these units may seem kind of weak to you, but in the grand scheme of things, by the time these heavy hitter fortresses reach my unit, my crawler would already be in front, and they're going to provide a lot of tanking. And speaking of crawlers, check out how many crawlers I have replicated in the back line here. Now, with nothing really defending on the far right, my unit was pouring into the tower, so this is going to be a huge round for me. When you're playing aggro, yes, you have the option to kind of press the buttons into your opponent by dictating where you want to attack. But sometimes when you're being hard counter, you have to think really hard about where you want to pull back. And in the last round, my opponent was just pulling back a little bit too far, allowing my units to swarm him on the right. Right, for unit drop here, I've decided to take the Scorpion. A Scorpion is a natural counter to medium-sized units like steel balls, and is also a fairly decent counter against giants like fortresses. The range on the Tarantula second tech had to pay the premium, but I think it's going to be worth it. Being the defender, your units aren't going to be moving too much, and also into steel balls, the further away you are from the steel balls, the safer you're going to be. So range is going to be critical for both the Tarantula and the Scorpion. My opponent took the Worm, level 2 Sandworm with 97,000 HP, and he took the Strike. Strike allows the Sandworm to pop up the ground and do an additional 30% attack and also a splash by additional 10 meters. So essentially almost doubling his splash damage. Problem with Sandworm and Strike is that if you create a continuous chaff wave by making a lot of fans, supplemented with crawlers, then they don't really get a chance to pop back into the ground, which means they're not going to reap the benefit of the Strike. 2 Sandworms are bearing down towards my tower, which is now level 2. And looking at my defense here, I am not equipped to deal with these 2 Sandworms. I have a Tarantula with high explosive, who barely will scratch the armor off the Sandworms, and also have 2 Marksmen. Both are level 1. So this is a very inadequate defense. So the missile was already used. I took care of my fans, and now the Sandworms are getting to work. On the left hand side, I think I am doing fairly okay, even though there was another level 2 Sandworm, but my level 3 Scorpion was just enough to take care of business. And without chaff clear on the front side, even if those fortresses have the absorption module, they're not really hitting the right target. Unfortunately, I am under tower debuff, and we have crawlers coming over this way, and we still got 2 worms that's going to pop, and boom, here is the Strike almost killing a level 1 Scorpion in one shot. But he is not going to get another shot because my level 3 Scorpion is already back at work. So far, I have defended pretty much everything that my opponent is throwing at me, and let's see if I can continue this trend. When you're in a defender, range is absolutely critical. When you're an aggressor, speed is the highest priority. So temp speed should be something that you always take starting from round 3. It's going to give your unit a lot more momentum and allow them to hit a lot harder. Alright, looking at the last round here, my oil and my smoke are now back, which means I can then force the smoke and oil for all this pack of units here. My opponent will see that on the card. I mean, these are public knowledge, so your opponent can see what sort of abilities are off cooldown, which means he will have some sort of response. My guess is probably mobile beacon this pack of balls over to the other side. Right now, looking at the board, I think my opponent has an opportunity to break on the far right if he really pushes it, which is why I added additional chaff here, just to slow it down as much as I can, really. I'm fairly confident on my damage output on the left-hand side, but I just don't want to deal with any sort of problems on the right. My opponent still has 1,200 resources that I can spend on whatever he wants. I would love to see some sort of chaff clear. These worms on their own into shield defense are not going to be sufficient. I took double shot on the Scorpions. That's one way of dealing with the worm, and if this is insufficient, next turn I'm going to take acid. Acid Scorpion with double shot, absolutely devastating. They can pop at level 1 giants in almost one shot. Level 2 worm, it takes a few more shots, but it will get there eventually. So my opponent did mobile beacon his high-level Mustangs over for chaff clear, but these Mustangs arrive a little bit too late, right? You see the worms are still just hitting level 2 fans left and right. Wow, level 2 sandworm just one-shotting my scorpion right there, and now getting to the tower. Alright, tower is down, and we still have really big Mustangs to deal with, and of course, there's some crawlers streaming in. And these worms don't care. And this is where the worms are the happiest, because they get to pop in and out, and every time they pop out, they deal that additional 30% damage per strike. However, it looks like it's just not enough because of my level 3 Scorpion, and I am able to take this game. So a fairly quick game with just 7 rounds. However, there's a lot of things that could have potentially gone wrong in this aggro defense. So here's what we learned whenever you're defending against aggro. When you're defending against aggro, vertical sledges work wonders. Fans are often better than crawlers when you're defending because fans pretty much stay where they are. And if your opponent has units that has a ton of splash, the most they're going to get is the first couple fans. Whereas crawler likes to bunch up. So if the opponent has any sort of splash, it's going to get maybe half and sometimes even an entire squad of crawlers. When you're defending, range is an absolute critical aspect. So the more range you can get on your units, the better. Having shielded fans where your opponents are weak in chaff clear is absolutely godsend, because these worms spend their pretty much entire last round on just these fans. Okay, so overall, it was a great game. Now, I wonder if there's a way for my opponent to actually win out on the far right, because I feel like there was a real opportunity to win on this side. So I'm going to jump into the replay, and I'm going to play as my opponent for the final round. All right, none of these cards are really great for me, so I'm going to get rid of those. I feel like the steel balls are actually not contributing too much for a couple rounds now, so I'm going to get rid of the steel balls. What I really want is chaff clear. So I'm going to get some chaff clear in the form of some wraith. I don't like to take a gun with wraith because the range is sometimes just a little too much. I wonder if I can, you know what? Let's splurge a little. Let's get double. And we're going to move the steel balls out of the way and to deal with the tower. I feel like the defense on the side is, I would say it's probably pretty dire, because you know there's going to be oil and smoke coming down in this round. And there's already high-level tarantulas as well as high-level scorpions. So there's really not much you can do here. All right, with 50, we're going to get temp speed, being the aggro player, and let's see how we do. All right, the Wraith are doing a very good job of just getting rid of the shielded fans, and now the worms are going to pop up, and they're going to do damage right away to this tarantula. And ranged Wraith can actually dispatch high-level snipers as well. Alright, we're getting tower. Now, is my tower leveled? Ooh, unfortunately, my tower is not level, which means the crawlers might be able to get in there. And that is bad news, because we have high-level units, especially a level 3 Scorpion waiting. That's really bad news. However, my opponent's board now does not have upshoot, and just like that, I was able to turn a very one-sided final round into a victory for my opponent. So this is just a lesson that there is a winning condition in every single board. You just have to find it. For me, I noticed a severe lack of chaff clear on this side, and also a certain lack of anti-air. Right now we have anti-air in the form of these 4 marksmen, with rate, with a gun and range, it can actually do a lot of damage to these marksmen, and they provide a critical service of chaff clear. Next round, I expect my opponents to get anti-air on these marksmen, and I will continue to put out more fangs, not fangs, more crawlers, so to distract my opponent. I might even consider getting loose, because the tarantula, yes, it's got high explosive, it still needs to take a little bit more shots to get to the loose crawlers, and we'll never know what happens, right? There could be more rounds coming in, and you may win, you may lose, but what is important is that for this round, you could have won. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the game and the analysis, and if you'd like to see more games like this, here's a video for you. I will see you on the next one.
Prepare your tactics, Mechabellum's calling. Deploy your fortress, the battlefield's alive with swarms.